All right, let's dive into something called International Human Resource Management, or IHRM. Now, this is the high-stakes game of managing people across different countries, cultures, and time zones. And as we're about to see, when you get this wrong, it can push even a massively successful global company right to the brink of a crisis.
So let's make this real. Get this. There's a big electronics company in Malaysia, ABC Limited. On the surface, they're killing it. But behind the scenes, it's a total mess. And why? Because their 20 expatriate engineers are making almost 3 times more than the 400 local engineers for doing the exact same job. You can imagine how that went over. The local team is demanding fairness, and what started as a simple payroll issue is now threatening to shut down the entire operation.
So how do you even begin to untangle a problem like that? Well, here's our game plan. First, we're going to see just how different global HR is from the HR you might be used to. Then, we'll explore why it's such a different ballgame, where these unwritten cultural rules can literally make or break you. We'll look at how companies actually organize themselves to handle all this, and then wrap up with the big, central question that every global leader has to face.
Okay, so to really get what IHRM is all about, we have to draw a line in the sand. Let's look at how it's different from the kind of HR that just operates in one country, because it's not just about managing more people, it's about a whole new universe of complexity.
And this slide really lays it all out. You can think of domestic HR like a local sports league. You've got one field, one set of rules. Everyone kind of knows how things work. But IHRM, that's the World Cup. It's played in dozens of different countries, each with its own laws, its own climate, its own fan culture. And one of the biggest reasons for all this complexity is that domestic HR usually deals with one type of employee. IHRM has to juggle 3.
First up, you've got your parent country nationals, or PCNs. These are your classic expats. So, imagine a German car company opens a new factory in South Carolina. That manager they send over from the headquarters in Berlin, that's a PCN.
Next are the host country nationals, or HCNs. This one's pretty simple. These are the local workers at that South Carolina plant. They're the American citizens who bring their skills and, maybe more importantly, their essential local knowledge to the table.
And here's where it gets really interesting and truly global. You have third country nationals, or TCNs. This is someone who isn't from the parent country or the host country. So, that German car company in South Carolina, they might bring in a world-class robotics expert from Japan to work at the plant. That expert is a TCN. Suddenly, you're managing talent from 3 different continents, all under one roof. Wild, right?
Okay, so we've got our players on the field. PCNs, HCNs, and TCNs. Now you can start to see why this isn't just business as usual. The moment you start managing these 3 groups across dozens of countries, you add layers of complexity that a domestic HR manager couldn't even dream of.
And the complexity, it just explodes from here. You're not just handling payroll anymore. You're dealing with international taxes, work visas, global relocation for entire families. You're not just hiring an employee. You're moving their spouse and their kids across an ocean. You have to get involved in their personal lives in a way you never would back home. And the risks? They're huge. A single expat who quits early can cost the company hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that's not even mentioning the challenge of keeping your people safe in unstable parts of the world.
So we know it's more complex, but why? What's the hidden variable that makes it so tricky? Well, a huge part of the answer is something powerful and often totally invisible: culture. It's the unwritten rule book that quietly guides how people think, communicate, and behave.
And this is a fantastic way to think about these invisible rules. Some cultural norms are what you might call widely shared but shallowly held. Think about burping at the dinner table in some cultures. Yeah, it's a rule, but if you break it, the consequence is just a little social awkwardness. But other norms are widely shared and deeply held, like thou shalt not steal. You break that rule and the consequences are severe. A global manager has to learn a completely new map of these social landmines for every single country they operate in.
And this quote just drives home how high the stakes are. This isn't just about knowing which fork to use at dinner. We are talking about the success or failure of the entire business. For example, a bonus system that gets an individualistic American sales team all fired up could be seen as deeply unfair and actually demotivating in a more group-oriented culture like Japan's. If you get the culture wrong, the game is over before it even starts.
So with all this cultural and logistical complexity, how do companies even organize themselves to compete on a global stage? It's pretty clear you can't just copy-paste your domestic org chart and hope for the best. The very structure of the company has to change and evolve.
And that evolution, it often happens in pretty predictable stages. It usually starts simple. A domestic company just adds an export department. As international sales grow, they might create a whole new international division to manage all that. But to become truly global, they often have to completely restructure, either organizing by global product lines or by different geographic regions to stay closer to their customers.
But here's the thing. In today's world, even those structures can be way too slow and rigid. The most innovative global companies are moving past those top-down pyramids and are evolving into something that looks a lot more like a network, something more dynamic, flexible, and interconnected. This leads us to what's called the Transnational Corporation, or TNC. So forget that old model of a powerful headquarters telling all its foreign branches what to do. A TNC is more like an integrated global web. Resources, people, and great ideas flow in all directions. The subsidiary in Brazil might develop a breakthrough innovation that then gets shared with the entire global network. Power isn't just at the top anymore, it's spread everywhere.
So why this big shift to a network? Well, it's driven by this really powerful tension, sometimes called the glocal paradox, the need to be global and act local at the exact same time. On one hand, companies need global consistency to be efficient. Think standardized parts or a single brand message. But on the other hand, local customers, cultures, and laws demand that they adapt. Think different food flavors or unique marketing for each country. This constant push and pull is what shapes the modern global company.
And that brings us right to the heart of the matter, the fundamental dilemma, the central strategic question that every single international HR leader wrestles with every single day.
So what do you do? Should your performance reviews, your training programs, and your pay scales be the exact same everywhere in the world to make sure everything's fair and efficient? Or do they have to be uniquely tailored to each local culture, each legal system, and each market to actually be effective? There is no easy answer, and navigating that exact tension is the core challenge and, frankly, the fascinating puzzle of international human resource management.